Hi guys and welcome to another Fool of the Week. Now this week's Fool could have been Marie Le Pen, but while she was pretty stupid in her political endeavours, the prize has to go to those who are defending her, or at least attacking the judges for putting her away. Far-right politicians in Europe have rallied round Le Pen, which is expected. But Talk TV spoke to the former leader of the Conservative Party, who was more angry here with the judges than with the criminal in this case. Crazy stuff, have a listen.
As Churchill once described, is the best of the worst systems that are available to us to govern ourselves, and it has its notches. But the one thing that you do say at the end of it all, the people make decisions that is best suited for them. That's what they're there to do, and our job is to stand for election, and if they don't want us, then we get kicked out. That is the nature, not a set of judges who are appointed and who quite often don't live in the same world that many of the people that vote do. So, this idea, I'm astonished at France, because they've apparently quite lately introduced this because of fears of corruption, that they could ban politicians. That was introduced. So this needs to be sorted out and torn up. I have to tell you now, I have no brief for her particularly, but what I will say, as the far left said as well up in France,
yep.
We've talked about this set of nonsense coming out of this advisory council on the judiciary and on sentencing, which I think is really important to have outed, and now the government is reacting by getting rid of it. But this is what happens when you live in a world dominated by people nobody ever voted for, who tell you how to run your lives, but never are responsible at the end of the day for what decisions they make wrongly. And that is the key. And this one, I have to say, is an abomination.
Okay. Oh my goodness, this is hilarious. Of course the Tories will be on the side of the criminal because, well, pretty much most of them are criminals themselves. So, of course, they're on the side of corruption because they're all pretty much corrupt. But my goodness, at least try and hide it. At least try and say, look, we don't fully agree with everything that they've done, but it's important that, people who are involved in some sort of corruption are put behind bars. But of course, the Tories are against that. They love the idea of corruption. They wouldn't exist if corruption had been completely eliminated. How would the Conservative Party function without corruption? So if they hear a story of somebody being put behind bars for corruption or some form of corruption, then they're going to be up in arms over it. Le Pen has been sentenced as a result of embezzlement. She was using European funds to fund her own political party. That's against the rules. It's amazing to hear the Conservative Party who bang on about law and order all the time, but as soon as one of their own or a friend of theirs does something wrong, they rally behind them. They don't care about the law. They don't care about the rules. They don't care about corruption. They don't care about embezzlement. If Iain Duncan Smith had to be on the side of the judges, then he'd have to look in the mirror himself and say, well, I should be probably in jail as well. Almost every frigging Tory should be in jail because we've been involved in some sort of corruption over the last number of decades. So we have to stand shoulder to shoulder with Le Pen because she's just like us. This is a 5-year ban. This does not mean that she'll be no longer able to run for office. I think it should be a permanent ban. I think any form of corruption should be severely punished. Politicians should have their careers ended over things like this. Because they knew they were breaking the rules. They knew they were breaking the law. So they deserve the full consequences of the law. And these are people who will make the rules for others. This is not like anyone else. Somebody else would serve their time and then they can return to society and do some job. Maybe not even in the same sector, but they'll be able to do something else. Politicians should not be allowed to return to office if they have been convicted of a crime. You have to have this standard because they are the ones making the rules for everyone else. They're the ones involved in writing and voting on legislation that impacts people's lives. That's why it's so important that they have to be clean. It was the right thing that Le Pen was kicked out, that she's banned from running for public office. I think it should be permanent, but the judges decided it's for 4 or 5 years. But of course the Tories are running to her defence. or at least attacking the judges here, because they see nothing wrong with corruption. They see nothing wrong with embezzlement. They see nothing wrong with these types of crimes. For them, they're not crimes. That's why Iain Duncan Smith is our Fool of the Week.